So come to the table. Now I'm gonna admit something. And I don't know if I've ever shared this before, but the way that I get these, we'll say, messages, is they usually come with a title. That's usually what happens. I call it a download, and I'll be doing something, and the Lord's like, downloads it, and there's the title. And make sure it's okay, it's still there. And I don't know what is to follow the title, which is kind of daunting sometimes. But I've learned to trust the process because inevitably it works. And I know it's not me. But I will share this. There was one title that I was given many, many years ago, and I'm like, what is ever going to happen with this? Because I didn't speak very much. But I knew that the title was relevant. And it took like 7 or 8 years for that title to like percolate and come to fruition. So today is Come to the Table. And you might notice there's this setting of the formal setting for eating, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I wanted a visual of coming to the table. And probably one of the most, you've probably seen this next picture, is, there we go. You've probably recognized one of the most visually recognized pictures of the Last Supper. And this picture was actually done by Leonardo da Vinci. And it's a representation of the 12 apostles. And Jesus had just kind of dropped the bomb on them that he was going to be betrayed. And so you can see in the picture, you can see the drama that's unfolding. They're like, "Ooh, wait, what? What do you mean?" You know? And this picture made me think about something that was shared with Ginger and I one time from a speaker, and they said, basically, they said that we have an opportunity to be at the table, to be invited to the table of our children. And we don't really have control over it. And I've always thought about this coming to the table. I have 3 kids. They each have their own personalities, their own preferences and likes and dislikes. And anytime I've thought about what is going on in their life and maybe the way that we jive or we don't jive, I think about this analogy of coming to the table. And as you look at this picture, you have Jesus who's front and center, and that might be likened to sitting at the head of the table, right? And then you have the peripherals. And when you count yourself at the table, sometimes you're just lucky to be seated at the table of the person that's at the head of the table. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like, sometimes your kids don't even want you at their table. They're like, you get to go sit over in the kids' table. And you're like, I don't want to be over here. I want to be at the table. And so when we're thinking about where we're placement and coming to the table, I want to explore 3 items with you today. And we're going to talk about 3 things about the table in relation to the table. When we think about like a family dynamic and it's dinner, you're called to the table, right? You might just show up at the table, but you're called to the table. And then also, we're going to look at a concept where you are known because you come to the table. And then you see Jesus at the table. So the first one we're going to look at is you are called. And we're going to look at a story in Matthew 9. And we're just going to read it because I think that the Bible is just really good to read. You don't have to everybody, going back to the inferences, you're going to be able to read it, and certain things are going to come out to you that don't come out to me, and likewise. So in Matthew 9:9, as Jesus went on from there, meaning the story that precedes this is he healed the paralytic, okay? So in context, when you go back to read it maybe the Sabbath afternoon, that's the context. And he saw a man called Matthew sitting in the tax collector booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and he followed him. And then it happened that Jesus was reclining at the table in the house. And behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were dining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why is your teacher eating with tax collectors and sinners?" But when Jesus heard this, he said, "It is not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick." So we look at this and we say, Jesus called Matthew to the table in a way, right? We see where he's reclined at the table. He's fellowshipping with them at the table. He's also inviting the for all practical purposes, the unliked to the table. And he does that with all of us. He calls us to the table with him. But he doesn't stop there. He says, "But go and learn what this means, that I desire compassion and not sacrifices. For I did not come to call the righteous, but the sinners." So the Pharisees at the time, they were stuck on the rules. Like, oh, okay, well, we do the sacrifice. We do this, we do that, and that's going to be the thing. Jesus is trying to get them to look on the other side, the human side, and go, not everybody's going to fit this perfect mold, but I'm going to call them to the table. I'm going to call them into service, right? He's trying to expand our minds. He's trying to expand their minds. The second thing we're going to talk about is you are known. And the precipitation for this, I'm going to read a little bit. I didn't do a slide for this, but it's found in Matthew 24 before we get to Matthew 25. And it says in verse 42, "Therefore be on alert, for you do not know which day your Lord is coming. But be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what time of the night the thief was coming, he would have been on alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into." Just the other day, I think it was Thursday, my neighbor sends me a message and she's like, "Two guys just knocked on my door, really softly." And of course, her dog goes berserk. But she found it unsettling. Had she known that they were coming? No. She wasn't prepared, so she calls, she didn't call, she messaged me. And I said, "Well, do you want Wesley and I to come over and sweep the perimeter, make sure?" Because we've been having a lot of weird stuff going on. We got squatters down the street from us. They've been leaving cars around, and so we've had odd people coming through the neighborhood. And it's not that we shouldn't be compassionate towards those folks, but we need to pay attention of what's going on. And in the context of that, Jesus says this with a parable. "Then the kingdom of heaven will be comparable to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom." Now think about this in the context of a table again. Don't lose the table metaphor, okay? 5 of them were foolish and 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the prudent took oil in flasks along with their lamps. Now while the bridegroom was delaying, they also got drowsy and began to sleep. They weren't paying attention. The bridegroom delayed. It was something happened. But at midnight there was a shout, "Behold the bridegroom! Come out to meet him. Then all those virgins rose, trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the prudent, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the prudent answered, no, there will not be enough for us and you too. So go instead to the dealers and buy some yourselves. So they weren't prepared. So they leave. You get the picture? They leave. They're all standing there. The bridegroom is coming. And if you think about it, you know what's happening. There's a wedding going on, right? There's a feast. You can just kind of let your mind envelop the scene of this parable. And while they were going away, the half of the, let's say it's 5 of the virgins, to make the purchase, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, where, guess what? There's tables. And the door was shut. And later the other virgins also came, saying, Lord, Lord, open up for us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. So we see here that, and I had a friend that kind of like wanted to kind of break this apart. It's not that the Lord of the house, the bridegroom, didn't want to know them. You understand that? But they weren't prepared. They weren't there to go into the place where they were already known. They weren't able to go in. They missed the opportunity to go in and sit at the table that was ready to receive them, mind you. But they weren't prepared. So they went away to get the... And so, based on that, he didn't know them. They weren't in there for him to know them, to be in the space with him. So, he finishes this way. Be on the alert then, for you do not know the day nor the hour when the bridegroom is going to come and invite you in to sit at the table with him and be known. The next part of this metaphor of the table is you see Jesus. And this is kind of on Luke 24 is following up after Jesus rises from the grave, and there's two disciples, and they're on the road to Emmaus, and they're talking amongst themselves, and Jesus approaches, right? But it says in 24, it says, and while they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself approached and began traveling with them. Now we just left this whole thought of to be known, right? So here's what's interesting about this is if we're talking about seeing Jesus, obviously they saw him, he approached them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. Isn't that interesting? Their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. And he said to them, what are these words which you are exchanging with one another as you are walking? And they stood still, looking sad. And one of them, named Cleopas, answered and said to him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem, unaware of the things which had happened here in these days? And they were, of course, referring to all of the stuff that had just happened where Christ had died and was hung on a cross. And they're reeling at it. And of course, then, if I read on, and he says, what things, as if he doesn't know. He said to him, the things about Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and in word and in sight of God and all the people. And he talks about how the chief priests, they delivered him into a death sentence. And how his body wasn't found. And he says to them, because they're in disbelief, right? Verse 25, it says, O foolish men, and slow of heart to believe in all the prophets have spoken. They didn't even know that they were seeing Jesus, and he's telling them all these things. At first, they didn't think that he even knew what was going on. And we get into Luke 24:29. So they got the sense that he was going to move on and go to the next town. Have you ever been talking with somebody and they're just kind of like, I'm going to go over here. And you're like, no, just stay. Just have some cookies and milk or something. Coffee, whatever it is, stay. This is kind of the sense they were getting that this person was going to do. But they urged him, it says, stay with us, for it is getting toward evening, and the day is now nearly over. So he went in and stayed with them. And when he had reclined at the table, there it is, the table again, with them he took the bread and blessed it, and breaking it, he began to give it to them. He's at the table, reclined, he's relaxed. It's completely normal. And then their eyes, when he broke the bread, it's as if something clicked and they remembered, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Wait a minute, that's something's jogging. And their eyes were opened and they recognized him. They saw Jesus. And then he vanished from their sight. Then they start reminiscing about this walk. They said to one another, were not our hearts burning within us while he was speaking to us on the road? While he was explaining the scriptures to us? So, you come to the table because you're called. When you're at the table, the one that you're invited to, you're known. And when you're at the table to the one that you're invited to because you're known, you do what? You see Jesus. You see a picture of him. And why is that important? Why are those things about the table important? Why should we consider them and give them thought and allow them to change and mold our heart maybe differently? To where when we think about the table, we think about something that is in the near future. We think about the fact that we have this promise in Revelation. It says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there is no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband." Are we remembering the word picture that we're getting here? The table. The visualization of coming into it to be known, to see Jesus. The wedding feast. Are we prepared? The thing that's coming toward us, the New Jerusalem, as a bride adorned for her husband. I love the word picture that the Bible is painting. And why do we think about that? Because going back to the table metaphor, is we're waiting to be able to be again in the presence of the Lord. We're wanting to have a seat at the table with the person that's at the head. And the very fact that we are called to the table, we are seen when we're at the table, and that we see Jesus at the table, gives us a picture of what is to come when the New Jerusalem comes down. And we see something, and I don't know if it will look like this. I was trying to get this picture of how big must that table be? Because the Bible talks about how big the New Jerusalem is. It's like 1,500 miles. And then it's 1,500 miles. And then it's 1,500 miles. Another place setting. I don't know if you can see the words. Hopefully you can. You have napkin in case we're all a little messy, because life is messy, right? You have up there, you have this little decoration because it makes life fun, it says. But it's true. Most tables are decorated, aren't they? In some ways. I like it better when it's decorated with food. Bread plate and a butter knife. You've got your 2 different plates. You've got your dinner fork. You've got a salad fork. You got soup spoon. You got teaspoon, dinner knife. And as you move through the courses of your meal, now correct me if I'm wrong, you start with the outside and you work your way in. Is that right? And then at the top you have a cake fork and you have a dessert spoon. And then even though I don't drink wine or champagne, those, as I understand it, there's different courses of those that go with different and paired with different foods. All for the purpose of having a more flavorful experience and being fulfilled at what? The table. To be fulfilled at the table. But interesting part that wasn't on the first slide how we started is you see right up at the top it says place card. And there's a name there. Now, I don't know if there's any Tiffany's in the room. Is there any Tiffany's in the sanctuary today? Why it's important is because that big banqueting table we looked at, there's a place setting for you. There's a place setting for you. There's a place setting for you. There's a place setting for you at the table. There is a card, a place card, that says your name on it at that table. There's also a place card setting for a lot of folks out there that don't even know. Did you know that? There is a card that has their name on it with this setting on this table that we've been invited to. And we need to invite them to. So I'm going to finish this way. Revelation. The book that actually points us back to the very beginning and the way that things began and the way that things will be restored to. I know I've said that before if you've heard me speak or different things in the past. I think it's really fascinating. But in Revelation 22:17, if the worship team wants to come up, they can come up. It says this: "The Spirit and the bride say, 'Come.' And let the one who hears say, 'Come.' And let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who wishes to take water of life without cost," it's free, The meal is free. The fulfillment is free. The place setting is free. So there's a whole world out there that is daunting. And if I'm being truthful with myself, I think it's a very scary place most times. But yet, he still saw fit to call me to the table. And when he does that, then he expects me to call somebody else to the table. That's what the book says. Right? Because there's a place setting for them too. And I was thinking about why in the world would I have this title, Come to the Table, specifically for the last message of the year. And I think it's because we're supposed to be thinking forward, right? That's what we do this time of year. We all find ourselves thinking forward. What should we be thinking about? We should be thinking about not just the place setting that we have waiting for us, but we should be thinking about the place setting that everybody else has waiting for them. And at Storyline, we have a unique opportunity to share a picture of Jesus that we all experience and we all love, which is this acceptance that invites us to the table. It invites us to be known. I love coming to Storyline because even if I don't know each of you very well yet, I'm sure I will if we hang around each other enough. And I'll learn more tidbits and we will be known. I will be known to you and you will be known to me. And the best part is when we come to the table and after we're known and through the process of growing and being known, we get to see Jesus. Not just on Sabbath, not just on the morning we meet and we sing and praise. The more we come to the table, the more we will see him in everything that we do. The more we will see him in the maybe the grocery store cash register person we meet. Or maybe we'll see him in the person that actually helps you change your tire if you don't know how to do that and you need help. So I would invite you to think about, as we move into this next year, what it is to come to the table where Jesus is. What does it mean for us to come to the thing he's inviting us into? And when we come, what do we want to do with that? We have a tremendous amount of responsibility. What are we going to do with it?